إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فإنه من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين من تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد عباد الله فإن أحسن الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة. I bear witness that there is no true deity worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I praise Him as He should be praised. And I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His final and last messenger. I seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from our own selves, from the evils of our own selves and the evils of our deeds. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from whoever can harm us. Or you who believe have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and fear Him as He should be feared, and do not die except in a state of submission and a state of Islam to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or you who believe have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say the truth, say what is correct. If you do so, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will correct and rectify your actions. And whoever obeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His messenger, then he has already attained the ultimate success. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, the best of speech is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the best of guidance is the guidance of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, His messenger. And the worst of matters are newly innovated matters in this religion, because whatever is newly innovated in this religion would lead you astray, and whatever would lead you astray would lead you to hellfire. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, what would you say of an individual who is standing in front of a body of water of high tides, and an individual who is well informed, who he trusts, tell him, do not go into that ocean or that body of water of high tides, for it has certain chemicals that will give you a certain sensation, a false sensation of pleasure, and if you go in there you might not come back. So this individual, desiring this sensation based on these chemicals, does not take heed of the warning and says, I'm just going to go a little bit and come back again. Feeling that he has control to stop whenever he desires. And so he embarks on that journey. And what is interesting is that the more he goes, the concentration of that chemical gets stronger. And he looks back every once in a while to see the shore, to reassure himself, I'm still in control, I can come back again. And he continues to swim deeper and deeper, feeling that excitement, and still looking back every once in a while. But at one point he looks back and does not see the shore, and doesn't know if he's able to come back or not. It's a far distance, and perhaps this chemical has clouded his judgment. What would you say of that person? The problem that they had was a false sense of control, that they can control the things that they're going to, even though with the warnings associated with it. What is interesting is that ourselves, we tend to embark on such journeys when it has to do specifically with sins. Quite often one of the reasons that we fall in sins and continue to fall into it habitually is that self-sense of control that we convince ourselves that we have over the sin, that we can commit it for a while and we can come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whenever we desire. And it's interesting is that this is one of the vices or the means and weaponry that the shaitan has, that he convinces the person, individual, to leave the path of Allah even momentarily. Don't worry, you'll come back again. You're young. Do Hajj when you get older. It'll wipe all these sins. Don't worry, it's only a minor sin. You know your boundaries, just don't go into major sin. Have that relationship with the opposite gender. Don't worry about it, you still know your boundaries. It's a false sense of control. It is not any different than perhaps the brothers of Yusuf themselves, when they allowed the emotion of jealousy and envy to fester in their hearts. And what the statement, what they said was interesting. It said, اقتلوا يوسف أو اطرحوه أرضا يخلو لكم وجه أبيكم ثم تكونوا من بعده قوما صالحين. He said, kill Yusuf or throw him in the earth. Or get rid of him, throw him out in the earth, in the land, in the outskirts, in the deserts. يخلو لكم وجه أبيكم. Nothing will distract your father. He'll be completely yours. ثم وتكون بعدين قوما صالحين. Then you would be afterwards pious individuals. So the gist of it, commit this sin. You're in control. After you do it, you'll be pious people. Come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask for forgiveness for what you have done. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, sometimes we really don't realize this, but quite often this is the excuse we use. And inshallah today, my aim is to remind myself and you of why this is truly a fallacy. It is a deception from the shaitan, and it's not as easy as you think it is to sometimes come back. And so I'm going to mention 5 things that make this journey, if you take it, or if any of us take it and embark on it, why it's difficult to sometimes return. And in fact, we find ourselves continuing to perform these sins and even sometimes not realize that they're wrong. One of the main issues, and this is the first reason, or this is the first problem that happens when we commit these sins, is that a sin begets a sin. It gives birth to another sin. It facilitates and makes it easier for the next sin. Now let me go back to, just to illustrate this, the story of the brothers of Yusuf. It started with them just allowing the emotion of envy to fester in their hearts and not fight it away, but rather let it grow, and this is a sin. They didn't act upon it, but the problem happened was that the first mistake was they acted upon it. So they came together and decided, one, to get rid of Yusuf. So what did they do? First, they lied to the father. أرسله معنا غدا يرتع ويلعب وإن له لحافظون. Send him with us tomorrow so that he would play and enjoy, have enjoyed like a good time, and we will protect him. That's a sin right there. Then what did they do? They threw him in the well. That's the second sin. Which led to the third sin, which many of the scholars have mentioned, is that they eventually sold Yusuf alayhi salam as a slave. From a free individual to a slave. It didn't just stop there. But once they did that also, they lied to their father again and plotted by falsifying that he had died. It didn't stop there. Quite often, they would continue to lie about this. For example, even when later on they met Yusuf as an adult, not knowingly, and it was schemed that it would make it look like the brother of Yusuf had stolen. What did they say? They say that he had a brother from before that did the same thing. Another lie. Worse is that they continued to be undutiful to their father whenever they'd see him cry over Yusuf. They would tell him, you are still going to continue this ignorance that you're in. So if you notice, one sin brings the next, brings the next, and brings the next. So the fact that you think you have control over that one sin that you're going to do, it doesn't end. You really don't have. It goes out of control. It spirals. Because you naturally quite often want to cover for that error. But you will use falsehood to do it. Which brings me to the next point. What is the problem that happens afterward that makes it difficult to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is that these sins that accumulate do truly affect our hearts. It allows our heart to sicken and become diseased. The wrong that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, and this is mentioned in a hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah, that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إذا أخطأ العبد خطيئة نكتت في قلبه نكتة سوداء فإذا هو أقنع واستغفر وتاب سكن قلبه فإذا هو نزع واستغفر وتاب سكن قلبه وإذا عاد زيد فيها وهذا الران الذي ذكر الله كلا بل ران على قلوبهم ما كانوا يكسبون. The Prophet ﷺ said, as narrated Abu Hurairah in Sunnah Tirmidhi, he said that if the servant, the slave, إذا أخطأ خطيئة, if he made a mistake, referring to a sin, not just a mistake by accident that he mean to, but no, he's referring to a sin. نكتت في قلبه نكتة سوداء. A black dot is placed on his heart. However, if he stops and refrains and backs out from it, واستغفر and asks for forgiveness, وتاب and repented, سُقِلَ قَلْبُهُ, his heart will be washed away from it. However, if he continued, or made another sin, زِيدَ فِيهَا, that dot or darkness will increase until it engulfs his heart. And this is the ran that Allah has mentioned in the Quran, كَلَّا بَلْ رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ. Verily indeed, the ran, which is referring to the effect of it, the darkness, the rust that has engulfed their heart because of what they have done. And so if you can imagine a sin over time, what it does, it didn't just sicken your heart because it's darkened by that layer of blackness, but rather it will engulf it. And if it engulfs your heart, what makes you think you'd want to return back to Allah? At this point, what happens is that you start preferring that enjoyment of the sin than going back to Allah because you're somewhat now blinded. Your heart is not healthy. It is not able to see and distinguish between what is right and what is wrong anymore. So even if you decide to come back to the shore, you're not sure which direction to swim to. You're lost at sea. And it becomes very difficult. In fact, that diseased heart is unable to carry you. You don't have the strength to swim back anymore. This is why it's difficult. Which also results in a third effect, which is called ilf al-ma'siyah, which means that you become used to the sin. It becomes a habit to the point that you don't feel that it's wrong anymore. You start thinking it's normal to the point that you stop caring if people see it. You don't care if people talk about it. That jealousy in your heart and fear of Allah starts going away. So if that is the case, if you don't see what is wrong anymore, how is it that you're able to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? A fourth thing that is a consequence of this, because of the accumulation of sins and the darkness of the heart, unable to distinguish between what is right and wrong, it really does affect your worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The acts of worship stop becoming pleasurable. In fact, you feel sometimes that it is a burden. You're dragging your feet to the salah. You have a hard time opening the Quran. You have a hard time focusing on prayers. To the point sometimes that we might perhaps skip a prayer. What we're doing over here is that we're further weakening our hearts. Just because we decided to embark on that first journey and we had that false sense of control. But this is what it would lead to eventually if you go down that road. And once again, this is why many of the people that go down that road are unable to come back. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from this. Now the last and the most severe effect, it's not the only thing, but I'm just mentioning because we don't have much time, is that the last effect that it does, or that it has once you do that, is that it ruins the relationship between you and Allah. Because if you want to think about it, Allah is telling you, this is bad for you, don't do it. And you're saying, I can control this, I'm good, I got this under control, I'm going to do it, I'm enjoying it. How does that affect our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's not exactly the best of terms that we should have that kind of relationship. But if you think even our forms of worship that I just mentioned before, when it weakens the bond between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And sometimes it can get to the point when it's severed. So how is it that we can reach the shore back again if that rope between us and Allah is either so weak it can't pull us, or worse, it has been cut off? Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, this is something that should not be taken lightly. When we ruin our relationship with Allah, when we don't have Allah as our Mawla, the one who is taking care of us, that will provide for us, and we sever that, we sever our relationship from the one that we cannot be independent from, the one that we need in our life to attain happiness in this world and the hereafter. If this is our situation, how is it that we ever can enjoy anything in our life? It only becomes a transient form of enjoyment that will always end with a sour taste. That will always end with some grief. Because it's the nature of this world, it will always end. The only thing that remains is the true relationship you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is the sweetness of Iman that really does remain. It is the treasure that if you attain in this world, you'll attain in the hereafter. But perhaps if you're prevented from it, you might be prevented in the hereafter. So these are 5 quick things. That is a reminder for us why we should never really trick ourselves into thinking that we can go into a sin and return back anytime we want. And we have to admit we do this quite often. We always say, just one last time. And it's never this last time. Unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rescues us. But it's always a second and a third. And it's not just that one sin, but it also branches off to other things. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect all of us from the devices of the shaitan. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us on the straight path. إن الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, when it comes to acts of sins and piety, we should always realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always put things in our path to help remind us and bring us back if we venture into this. But we have to be aware that we might not be able to always grab that lifeline. It's important also to realize that sometimes our actions are magnified in either sins or reward depending on the time we're in. Now the reason I mention this is because we are in one of the sacred months of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is Rajab. And it's just a reminder for myself and you that it's a good idea to take opportunity of this month to try to correct our path, try to cleanse our hearts, so that in less than 2 months we're able to reap the rewards of Ramadan. So that we're able to really take advantage of this month and perhaps achieve the piety level that we desire. Because it's very difficult to fill in piety without cleansing our hearts first. It's a process. You need to clean the remnants or the problems or the defects or the stains before you're able to fill it with something else. Otherwise it just overflows and you're unable to have that lasting effect that we're looking for. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who hear the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His messengers and follows the best of it as much as we can. Allahumma اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وحيهم والأموات. اللهم ارحمنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. وربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم اسألك العفو والعافية في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا على علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين وارفع راية الإسلام. اللهم أعنا على أعدائك أعداء الدين. اللهم انصر المسلمين والمستضعفين في كل مكان. اللهم انصرهم على أعدائهم. اللهم كن لهم ولا تكن عليهم. اللهم أيدهم بنصر من عندك. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. وقوموا إلى صلاتكم.